Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining our webinar. Today, our topic is Times They Are Changing, Should Your LMS Be Changing Too? Featuring Jim Lundy of Aragon Research and Patrick Devlin of Meridian Knowledge Solutions. If you have questions during the event, please feel free to submit them in the questions window, and we will get to as many as we can at the end of the session. This webinar will be recorded, and a link to it will be sent to everyone in a follow-up email tomorrow. Gentlemen, if you can please introduce yourself.
Thanks, Michelle. Hey, it's Jim Lundy, founder, CEO, and lead analyst here at Aragon. I'm delighted to be today with Patrick. Patrick, go ahead and give your intro.
Hi, Patrick Devlin, Chief Business Development Officer at Meridian Knowledge Solutions, and likewise, Jim, very happy to be here with you.
So for the audience, today we're really going to be talking about, and I think the title of the webinar, Times Are Changing, because they really are. And our theme today is you need to do more with learning, and it may mean, as the slide implies, a change is needed. And so as we go about what's going on today in the world, to keep that in mind. And this is going to be kind of an exchange between Pat and I talking about what we see going on in the market, and why there's more need for learning today than there ever has been during this COVID era. So with that, we're going to go ahead and just dive in. So obviously we just did our introduction. So we're going to talk about some of the key trends, technologies. We're going to talk about why it might be time to make a change, and then talk about some best practices for leveraging modern learning for associates and customers. So it's an action-packed agenda. Think about questions you might have. We will have a Q&A at the end that Michelle will help moderate. And without further ado, we're in the webinar. Pat, go ahead and give us an intro to Meridian, please.
Right, just a quick introduction for those of you that may not be familiar with Meridian. We have been in providing learning management system solutions now since 1997. We're located just outside of Washington, D.C. in Reston, Virginia. Of course, like most of you today, we're located at home. So this is my home office, not my Reston office, and it has been since March. We have over 350 plus deployments around the globe, with the bulk of our deployments being here in North America, and heavy emphasis on some public sector and as well as some high compliance types of solutions, including a significant amount of extended enterprise solutions as well. And we're seeing the extended enterprise solutions only increasing in importance and coming up more and more. So we've been in the business for a long time. We like to say we have a battle-tested platform that is capable of doing just about any of the heavy lifting that you need from a learning management solution provider. So thanks, Jim.
Sure thing, Pat. Okay, so let's talk about this era of remote work that Pat just alluded to. Now, I actually happen to be broadcasting from the Aragon office here in Silicon Valley. Mainly because it's only 10 blocks from my house, and we're paying our rent, so I figure we might as well use the office, but we really don't have very many people here. But really, remote work is really the new reality. I was at another firm for a lot of years and ran a global team of remote workers, and so for some people in some industries, remote work is not new, but for most of it, it is. And when you're talking about remote work, it still means you need to have knowledge, and you need to have better knowledge and faster knowledge, which really means you need more learning and better learning. That comes back to the theme that we're talking about today. And so really one of the big things we've been getting calls from enterprises about is the fact that they don't think they have good enough learning today, and they think they need to do more to really make it so that their associates are more prepared for this digital kind of workplace and really digital experiences with customers. So that's, again, is the theme for today. I see a lot of furry friends on a lot of the calls I'm on with. I do a lot of video calls, but really there's never been a time to really invest in learning like today and really prepare for kind of coming out of the exhaust of COVID into the new world with the vaccine coming online. So you planning for 2021 and making those investments in what we call modern learning is really one of the key takeaways. We didn't show any other slides today. That would be really one of the key takeaways. Have you really planned to ensure that you can basically not only help your associates, but also with extended enterprise, help your customers really ensure that they're transferring that knowledge through what we call modern learning. So here's a key premise, and I'm going to ask Pat a question here in a second. But we think that this whole shift that we've had over the last 15 years, where everybody talked about talent management and talent management suites, I was never really bought into that, because having been a practitioner of learning, meaning I rolled out training when I was at Xerox, and also actually helped when I was at Gartner, that it really is a unique thing. Learning and training is a unique animal, and absorbing it into a suite, one of the reasons people are calling us is they need better training, better learning, and they don't think their current provider is doing that. The level of dissatisfaction with learning that's part of a talent management has been pretty high. Now, again, there are some providers that really lead with learning. In fact, Pat, Meridian is one of those companies that, that's really all you do, is you really focus on learning as one of your key competencies.
100%. So learning has been our focus since inception, and continues to be so. Now, obviously, the definition of what is required from a technology partner to support the learning function for our clients has evolved over time and expanded greatly. But we have tried to stay within our swim lane, if you will. And as a part of that, we've also have built into the platform from day one extensibility. So we have over 2,000 documented APIs that we make available to our clients, because we believe that it's extraordinarily important, if you're going to go deep in learning, that you have to be a good player in an overall ecosystem, and sort of be agnostic to who you need to integrate with. And so that ease of integration and very deep level of integration that we try to support for our client base has been a critical deciding factor for many of the people that do business with us.
Great. And so really, this kind of suggests, when we talk about new requirements, well, you'll hear us talk about the idea of employee engagement, but really it's about not just skills, but it's actually about something called mastery of job. What do you need to know to do a job really well, or to perform not just one thing, but a series of events? And so that's really about knowledge acquisition. So that's going to be one of the things we talk about through the rest of the webinar. Just where are we in the eras of learning? And, the LMS era has been a great era, what I kind of call teach and test. Modern learning is kind of where we're at now, which is kind of like always on demand learning. What we call learning mastery is where we really focus on ensuring that people absolutely know the things that they need to know, and that the system makes sure that those skills, and again, I say skills, that's not really the right word, that the ability to understand what I need to do at a certain job level, that I know all those things. That's what we call learning mastery. But yeah, we're Jim, really.
I'm sorry. I would just suggest that when you compare that to teach and test, what was primarily happening there is the testing was on the content instead of on the behavior change in the workplace. Yeah. And I think that's really what you're getting at when I hear mastery. Is it impacting behaviors in the workplace in a positive way that are having an impact on the business? And I think and that's really critical for the clients that we're working with today.
Yeah, I mean, because a lot of the teach and test was really, did you like the course versus did you know it? It really wasn't testing on, do you know the material that we shared?
Yeah.
So that's why we would focus on the actual performance. Can you do the job?
Yeah.
And there's different ways to kind of do those examinations.
Yep. 100%.
So this brings us to this idea of what we call modern learning. Modern learning is more than just taking a course when you get hired and onboarded. It's about basically learning all the time, with the idea of shifting to knowledge and just in time, things like video, and the fact that, students do want modern learning, and enterprises really know that to do customer engagement, associates have to be up to speed. And we kind of position this all as part of what we call employee engagement. So it's not about talent management. It's really about engagement. And younger workers are kind of, Pat, they're kind of demanding that they want more from their experience, kind of more of a bottoms up thing as far as people leaving because they don't think that they're learning.
Right. Right. Yeah, and I think the other important thing you pointed out there is this notion of moving to a continuous learning process rather than an event-driven process where somebody goes offline, they put their butts in seats, they listen to the lecturer, and then it's over. Versus something where that might be one of the events in the process, but there's no more sort of just a beginning and an end. It's a continuous process of refreshment and going back in and making sure that people have the support they need to change their behaviors at work. And I always come back to that impact on business. I think it's over the 20 plus years I've been in the space, we always talk about getting that seat at the table, and part of that is speaking the language of the business rather than of learning. And making sure that you don't look at success as properly implementing a learning program. That's the means to success. The success is the impact that you're having on the business, and the development of your employees, is a critical part of that, especially with the new workforce that's coming on board, who just has a higher level of expectation that they're going to be taught what they need to know to be successful. And when they don't see that professional development coming, they'll leave. They will absolutely leave.
For sure.
Yep.
So that also brings us to this idea of why learning content is so strategic. And we have some pretty big forecasts about the spending on learning content going to about 600 billion. And there's some stats here that we've got, but really the big thing is that we don't think in a lot of companies that they've really spent the time or made the investments in the right kind of learning content that allows people to do what you just said, which is, do they have the understanding to do their job? So it's not just off the shelf, which is really the soup du jour today. People think if I get off the shelf, I'm done. And really, that's just basic skills. That's not job understanding what to do in the job. And so that's why 70% of learners don't feel they really have mastery of what they need to do in their job. And I know, Pat, you guys have been doing some stuff relative to content with some of your client engagements recently as well.
100%. And I think the important thing here is that while the off-the-shelf content, and especially with the new, so I say new, but it's not so new anymore, but the content aggregator solutions that are out there, there's no lack of off-the-shelf content. But I think where we see learner satisfaction go way up, and where I think mastery becomes more of a reality, is when you're providing that proprietary content, where you're developing your own content using your own subject matter experts, and really giving the people that extra bit that they need to be successful at the job that they're doing right now, so that they can that they can hit their goals, they can exceed their goals, they can get promoted, and they can develop their career. And they want to see that extra touch. They don't want to just see some off-the-shelf content. They want to see the content by their provider, by their employer, that really gives them the edge that they feel like they need in the marketplace. And I also think there's we talk about the shelf life of content. We see that decreasing all the time. So I think it's also extremely important to not only develop that proprietary content, but to keep that content refreshed. And we work with kind of to stay at that best of breed model rather than developing those solutions ourselves. We have a very strategic partnership with our content partner, content authoring solution and learning content management solution provider, Domino One, and our clients are ever increasingly interested in pursuing that and really leveraging that to make a difference.
Cool.
Yep.
Okay, so this is a chart that's kind of a lot here, but this is our Aragon technology arc for 2020 for employee engagement and learning. And there's a couple of things just to point out as far as an overview. There's 3 areas or 3 phases of our technology arc: emerge, adopt, and mature. And what we do each year is we plot each technology and score them as based on adoption and usage. And you can see on the right, we actually have had corporate learning as mature for quite a while. But when we look at what we call modern learning and employee engagement, you notice we have employee engagement still in an early adoption. And we have a number of technologies like video learning and micro learning that kind of make up that modern learning story as still emerging. So that's, again, it's kind of a flyby, but again, we really do dive deep into this area, and there's been more stuff come out on learning as far as, new ways to do learning and new content delivery. Like, for example, video learning. We're one of the few research firms that covers video learning. Another area that's come out and really seeing a lot of demand is in the sales learning area. Learning chatbots, we'll talk about a little bit, and this idea of automating knowledge. And that's really when you look at blending a modern learning platform with great content, you really have a knowledge delivery system. So like I said, there's a lot here. We actually have videos that kind of summarize this. But like I said, we produce these every year, and it just kind of shows you that we really do believe that learning is the critical thing. Even things like XAPI, Pat, you mentioned earlier. So again, there's a lot here, and again, our belief is this is why learning is breaking out from talent management. Is it's hard for people that are doing 6 different modules in the talent management suite always to necessarily keep up with all the requirements.
Yep.
Okay, so we're going to talk more as we shift here into more of the things about what you need to do. And again, I know this is an area that's near and dear to Pat, but we've got a little maturity thing as far as deployment levels, as far as red being it's not really deployed, green meaning high levels of deployment. And so when you look at, basic off-the-shelf content, a lot of people are licensing that or through content aggregators. Not new, but really not that impactful. It gives you information, but it's not going to really help you get your job done. It might help you with parts of it. Then you got taking operational content and really making it into like how-tos. For example, how to operate a tractor, and there's a series of curriculum that goes with that. Advanced simulations also help to mimic, allow people to practice over and over again. For example, like a nuclear power plant or something like that. And so, Pat, this is really one of the things I know that the Meridian's been doing with clients is to help them with their content journeys through some of your partnerships.
Well, we're extraordinarily happy that many of our clients are in the federal government space and in military and intelligence community, and in that area in particular, they are really pushing. So that red light on advanced simulations is a bit yellow in that world, and so we're very fortunate to partner with some of them and go along on that journey. And we're seeing some, and it's still in pockets. It's not like it's widespread, but we still see pockets of huge success in making this journey that you're talking about here towards more advanced simulations and really digitizing the operational content. And XAPI is a critical component of that. XAPI is one of those things that's been talked about for a long time. But we really see it starting to be used on a more regular basis, even at a very fundamental level. We just signed a new client who wanted to, who was reselling content, and they wanted to capture some of the data that was happening in that transaction and import it into Salesforce. Whereas in the past, that was certainly a possibility, but it would have been an expensive one-off proprietary integration in order to make that happen. We were able to use the XAPI capability that's native in Salesforce now, and the XAPI capability within in our solution to quickly make that transfer happen at the LRS level and integrate that data. That's a very simple example, but there are also very advanced examples like that happening where we're collecting the data that's happening in simulations and skills practices and marrying it up with the learning data, and then using that to do analysis to suggest what's working, what's not working, and obviously do more of the former and less of the latter.
Yeah, and it's funny you mentioned the simulations, because I know that in a lot of government agencies this has been a big deal, and I think it's kind of coming back to the future. Corporations used to do more of it, and what we've seen is that costs have come down. They're easier to create than they ever have been. And at the same time, on the operational thing, I saw a really cool video learning thing of a guy showing how to serve at a restaurant, which was basically, waiter training. And I thought it was really, really well done. And again, a lot of times what we see in a lot of industries is they still have operational books, but they haven't taken that and converted that into hands-on training.
Mhm.
So that's a big kind of deal. And like I said, that the building out more of a content library and a content curriculum and partnering with firms are going to help you do that versus just sell you the infrastructure is becoming a bigger conversation when it comes to making a switch.
Well, and I think the P word, as I called it, was the one that caught my attention there, because it really is a partnership now. I think 20 years ago we viewed success differently. It was implementing our technology solution according to the specs. Now that's just the beginning. That's sort of the commencement of the partnership, and the implementing the solution is a means to an end, and the end is business results. And so that's how we look at it more strategically. And then saying, okay, now we got that done. Let's start solving business problems.
Correct. Yep.
Yep. Yep.
Okay, so when we try to put this all in context and talk about an approach, first of all, we kind of look at there's a lot of different learning journeys that go on in an associate's life cycle. And I think the thing that's shifting relative to the need for more content is we think that learning becomes more of a continuous thing, not a one and done. And while onboarding is important and basic skills are important, having learning paths, there's also the on the job, and then this idea of continuous learning through things like micro learning and reinforcement and quizzes. But on the mastery learning, we kind of have stepped back and looked at what are the things you need to kind of do to actually get to that, which is you have to have partners that are going to help you with this whole thing, to take the time to, first of all, outline the program, and then have partners that will help with the content and courseware development. You got to test it, you got to adjust it, and then you got to go. And so, doing that across the different business units by job role, obviously focusing on customer-facing jobs first, because that's the highest impact. But again, we've seen, a lot of times people stopped doing this, and it's kind of like a back to the future thing. So when you're actually, like I said, looking for, a learning provider, you need to look at the entire set of things, not just, to quote, what I used to say even 10 years ago, it's not about the LMS. It's about the ecosystem. And again, looking at mastery-based learning and partnering with people, and Meridian is one of the reasons that they're growing is that they're helping people with their entire program, as Pat just said. So Pat, any comments on this?
Nothing to add right now, but I think it just very supportive of the message overall, and it reflects a lot of what we see going on with our clients, and that they really they appreciate the fact that we are there for them throughout the entire journey, and that we are doing that all with in-house resources, and not always bringing in third parties.
For sure. And again, that becomes one of the big catalyst moments for people when they realize that somebody could help them with this dilemma. Pat, on the next time, I'm going to turn it over to you.
So, we talk a lot about change, and I wanted to discuss this a little bit, because one of the things that I've seen over the years, and I've worked with, probably thousands of people, like the people that are participating in this webinar, at hundreds and hundreds of companies over the years, and it seems like there's always this focus on dissatisfaction with the existing solution as a means for driving change to a new solution. And yet, over the years, the majority of the time, and the data's out there, there's a significant body of data out here to support this, that even when people are dissatisfied with the status quo and they want to make change happen, they end up staying right where they are. And the biggest difference here, I was doing some research, and I said to myself, oh, let's go to Google, and there must be a formula for change. And you type formula for change, and I came up with this, and it was and I really enjoyed reading about it more deeply, and it makes a lot of sense and really maps to the experience that I've had in the space over the last couple of dozen years. And that is that dissatisfaction is generally not enough to overcome the inertia, the resistance to change that exists in most organizations. And and I think the other two factors that have to be considered when you're thinking about this is the vision of what a future state could look like and being very succinct about that, and then also the concrete first steps for how to get there. You don't need to have everything mapped out, but you need to have those first steps mapped out for how you're going to get there. And so if there is a strong enough dissatisfaction with the current state and an ability to express that dissatisfaction in a way that impacts the business, it's not enough that you're unhappy with the reporting capabilities or you're unhappy with say, the integration capabilities of your provider, or maybe they're not innovating fast enough, or something like this. That's not enough. You have to be able to express that dissatisfaction is say, and because of that, the following impacts are happening on our business. And in addition to that, you combine that transfer over to the negative impacts on the status quo is having on the current business. You really do a good job of defining a clear vision of the future state and express the first steps in a way that everybody kind of can buy into how they can be a part of the solution. And when our clients do this, they overcome that resistance, and change is very probable. And as you can imagine, being in the business development space that I'm in, if we're working with people and in 60-70% of the time they end up not doing anything new, that can be a really, really big time sink. And so it's very important for us early on to identify this, to communicate this with our clients, and to really be sure that they're not just buying into the D part, but into the V part and the F part here, so that they ultimately can achieve the changes that they're looking to make for themselves, for their departments, for their organizations, and for the larger company as a whole. So I think if you were mentioning if there was one big takeaway, I think this is a huge takeaway for those of you out there who have struggled with trying to implement change in your organization. And if you want to follow up and talk more about this and really building the business case for change so that you have a much higher probability of making that happen within your organizations, we'd be glad to have that conversation with you. Even if the change, frankly, is not necessarily your LMS. We're very passionate about seeing you be successful in your learning and development process. So I think this model can be applied to any change that you're trying to make happen within your environment. And it's funny, I jokingly said to Jim, everybody thinks the only constant is change, and yet, what I've seen is the only constant that I see in most of the situations that I deal with is the status quo. Everything's changing around you, but you're not changing the way that you're approaching it, and that requires a lot of discipline and a very structured approach if you're going to make it happen.
For sure.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a good actually way to walk through how you might make a decision to make a change.
Yep.
Okay, well, look, Aragon does a lot of work in the learning market. In fact, we do market evaluation reports called the Aragon Research Globe. We've done corporate learning for, I think, 7 years. And for 2020, for I think the second year in a row, Meridian was named as a leader along with some others. And I think that's a reflection on your strategy and your client execution, Pat. So, there's the report is out there, but like I said, one of the key things to look at is what are some of the differences in the players? How do they do the things we just talked about? Is how do they offer the full ecosystem of services? Do they outsource that? A lot of them do. Do they have a HQ team where if you need heavy lifting, the headquarters team can help you? But like I said, Pat, just want to congratulate you on being a leader this year.
Yeah, thank you. And one of the things that I think people appreciate about us is that we are different. Rather than having a one-size-fits-all sort of monolithic approach as part of an overall suite, we do have multiple delivery options. For example, we still support multi-tenant SaaS, like everybody has the expectation today, but some of our clients really benefit from being set up in a private cloud environment or a single tenant SaaS. We also still have clients running in because of various reasons that want to run it in-house behind their own firewall in a highly secure environment in many cases. And we can support all of those delivery models. And what I like to say is, rather than coming in and diagnosing a solution and then really listening and then prescribing what you think is in the best interest of the client. If you really only have one solution and you really can only deliver it one way, it doesn't matter how much diagnostics you do, you're going to prescribe the one solution you have delivered the one way you deliver it. And typically most of the people that we're competing with at the enterprise level are also not delivering those services. So they're farming out the services to third parties. And there's a lot of moving parts in that. And I think the fact that we can listen and the feedback that we and prescribe the right solution makes us unique. And one thing that I heard very loud and very clear when I did my initial introductions to our client base when I came on board over 2 years ago was this notion of having it done your way. One of our great clients down in the state of Georgia said to me, Pat, we chose Meridian because I wanted my LMS, not your LMS. I want my LMS. And you've continued to deliver that for me time and time and time again. And so I think we're very honored to be in the recognized in the leader quadrant, but I also think we're very humbled by the fact that we are different than the other people in that quadrant, and our clients are very appreciative of that difference.
Okay, cool. All right, so this is another thought when it comes down to it. And I think I think one of the things that sometimes, Pat, you guys don't talk about as much is that you've done some amazing things in federal that tie into some of these different areas that on the commercial side, a lot of federal agencies do an awful lot of things with hardware, with environments. They're very complex, like defense. And so when you look at, the fact that you got to have skilled people, sometimes there's lots of turnover, so that the pressure to maintain the skill level when you have turnover becomes even more critical. So looking at industries that are high consequence obviously is one of the ways to start, but I would also suggest that you actually have a fair amount of experience in that area as well.
100%. Yeah, the company got its start in federal and is still pretty much the long pole in the tent is our federal business practice. However, we also do a lot of other high consequence training, whether it be in heavy manufacturing, for example, or in other industries that are not only training, more importantly, not only training their own staff, but many of our clients are training their whole ecosystem, the people that sell and support and maintain their solutions on an ongoing basis. So people that are doing that, you call it high consequence industries, but it really is high stakes training, because it not only does it ensure that that's being done correctly, but in many cases there are huge financial implications in it as well. So if you're a service technician and you're not and you are able to achieve these certifications, then it directly impacts the fees that your company collects for providing these services and support in the larger ecosystem. And so this training is extraordinarily important. And then of course you talk about things that go on in the federal space. Those in some cases it truly is life or death if this stuff is done right or not. And so these are situations like we like to say an ideal client for Meridian is when the learning is just absolutely mission critical. And we've been able to support and operate in those types of environments successfully for more than 2 decades.
Nice.
Yep.
Okay, so I've got some thoughts before.
I think unfortunately Jim has frozen. So Patrick, maybe you can speak to this slide until he can get him back.
Okay. Are you able to still hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So I'll jump in here on the summary then. I can't stress enough on the first bullet is that if you're looking to make a change, really look at the business needs first and let those business needs drive what you're trying to accomplish, and then really evaluate the vendors that you have in place today and whether or not they're aligned with you in terms of trying to address those business needs. I think sometimes it can be easy to get so lost in the forest for the trees when you get into list. I mean, we look at them all the time. People will respond to an RFP that'll have 300, 400 or more requirements from the LMS. And while those requirements are important, I would suggest that if you're dealing with a mature product vendor like Meridian or some of the others that are out in the field that have been out here for a long time, probably most of them are going to address most of those requirements most of the time in a way that's going to be sufficient for you. But what is really different is their model of engagement with you. How are they working with you from a services standpoint, and then how are they working with you on an ongoing basis to ensure that the things that you need as they change, that the product is evolving and changing in support of that on an ongoing basis. And I can't, you've heard me say impact on business, impact on business, impact on business. I do believe that in all of the successful relationships that we have, the getting the systems to work is just that's the starting point for the relationship. And it's then getting that working system to solve business problems on an ongoing basis that is really important, and we appreciate partnering with our clients to do that. And then of course it's the last bullet is something that we stress a lot is don't be afraid of numbers. I think in learning oftentimes where there seems to be this resistance, and when I say numbers, I mean the business numbers, the results, the forecasts, the revenue, the bookings, the whatever it is that you're trying to impact. It could be the error rate, it could be manufacturing mistakes, it could be health and safety of your staff, or whatever it might be. But align with the business unit partners and find out what their metrics are and make those metrics yours. And yes, there's always multi-factors that go into impacting those metrics, but be willing to sign up for a piece of that and be willing to align and be flexible, because you'll come up with a great plan. But then, as you know, once you're starting to execute on that strategy, flexibility is really key. So you can't just figure out, the plan and then think it's going to run itself. You have to remain flexible, remain engaged, and working with those business partner units to ensure that you're helping as a partner to deliver those business results over time. Anything you'd like to add, Jim?
Yeah, look, I think outcome-based learning, yeah, I had a little hiccup here, so go to webinar, kind of lost my connection. So nothing that I would say that you didn't already cover.
Excellent. So I think we were going to turn to some Q&A. If anybody has any questions, I think you could type them in, and Michelle, I believe have you seen any questions?
Yes, I do have a question. Someone's saying, I have a problem getting team members to engage in learning opportunities. How can I get them interested in taking advantage of these opportunities that are available?
Jim, you want to take the first swing, or do you want me to go?
Yeah. I mean, look, I think the big thing is you got to assess where you really are and what is not working. And a lot of times when you look at operational performance, it is usually tied to, do people, for example, if you did a survey, do people think, like I showed on one slide, do they know what they need to do their job? If you have a gut feel on that and you actually test it, you're going to know the answer pretty quickly that you probably need to make a change.
Yeah, I was going to suggest something similar, which is talk to them. I shouldn't say talk to them, listen to them. So get a conversation going, and then listen and see what it is they think they need or are lacking, in order to be successful at their jobs. Because my guess is if it and there could be, it could be that you're actually doing that, and that you are delivering the right content and they're still not engaging. But I think that's the first step, is listen. The second step is generally comes from leadership support and executive support. So I think the second thing there is if you've done that and you're still not getting the engagement, is are they getting the message from their leaders that engagement is viewed as important to them, and I think that could go a long way.
Michelle, any other
Great.
questions
That's helpful.
from the audience?
Yes, we do have a few more. Someone is asking, how does Meridian help clients measure their learning outcomes or help partners achieve learning or training objectives? So maybe, Patrick, a use case might be helpful.
Well, I mentioned XAPI earlier, and that's one of the things that we're seeing emerging more and more now as a means to do that evaluation that you're talking about. The other thing that and what I mean by that is like a very simple exercise. You might be doing maybe you're running a campaign, cybersecurity training, and you're trying to convince people to not fall for some of the normal baits that come in via email, for example. Then you can follow up that training by actually sending out test emails. And then you can use XAPI to see how people engage with that email, capture that data, and then combine that data with the feedback, with the learning data, to see if you're having an impact. That type of feedback loop, very simple, the basic example, but that kind of feedback loop we see happening more and more, and really driving that sort of analysis of whether or not you're having the impacts that you're looking for. So I think XAPI is something that more people should be looking at. I think there used to be a little maybe of a fear factor associated with diving into it, but the technologies that our providers have matured, we certainly have put a big emphasis on it. And we think that that's a very, very powerful means for driving that kind of evaluation.
That's really helpful. Thank you, Patrick. Another question is, my organization has several LMSs. How common is it for companies to have more than one?
I can start that. I think as you look at operational units, business units becoming more autonomous, it's not that much of a surprise. I think the bigger question is, what's the content strategy across all of those? Because a lot of times you say, okay, we're going to go buy our own, but you don't have that approach to content. And again, that really, we kind of look at, if you're going to do business with a provider, they got to help you with everything, not just one part of it, which is the technology platform.
And we see it very, very common in our environment as well, especially when people are looking at doing extended learning solutions. Many of our clients are using a different solution to do their extended learning, providing learning opportunities to people outside of their employee base than they are with what we'll call the HR learning management system, if you will. So it is common. And not that we also are involved in people that want to consolidate their LMSs. There's no question that there are some cases where that overlap is probably functionally not required, and it can make sense to consolidate and in the right cases. But there's absolutely, I think, an argument to be made for multiple LMSs if the audiences, the learning audiences, are very unique and different.
Okay, thank you very much. And then the last one I have at the moment, and if anyone else wants to ask one, please go ahead and open the questions window and type it in. Someone is asking, we have many partners that need training on our products to represent us properly in our market. Is it easy for Meridian to include non-employees in their training offerings?
Oh, absolutely. And I just mentioned that probably 30 or 40%, if not higher, I'd have to go back and check, of our clients are using our solution to train people that are outside their employee base. And one of the things that we've done over the years as a result of that is build up a very robust domain. We call it domain capability. which allows you not only to create very specific sort of walled off environments within the LMS to support different learning communities, but also to go even as far as to distribute administration of those. So we in one case, for example, at the Commonwealth of Virginia here in my home state, we have they have over 200 different agencies using one LMS, but in multiple domains and doing their own administration. And to Jim's comment earlier, we also allow for the management of content across all of those domains. So it's very easy for the central administrator to make a common set of content available to every domain, and then for the domain administrators to provide their own content that could, and that content can be shared or cannot be shared. That can be done at an administrative level. But that ability to have a common content management strategy across all those different learning communities is also critical to supporting that kind of environment.
Okay, and the last question I have is, how easy would it be if we choose to charge for the training that we offer to our resellers? Right now, we are offering training at no charge, but are considering making it a revenue channel.
Yeah, and once again, e-commerce is just part and parcel of supporting an extended enterprise solution, and we can manage that right down to the domain level. So I think that's something that is, and you know, if you want, we can follow up. There's actually sort of a multi-level approach to how you support extended enterprise. Whether it's B2B, B2C, whether it's bundling and all these other things. So you can get very, very sophisticated in the way that you support extended enterprise learning from a commerce perspective. And we certainly have the maturity in that area.
Okay, that was all the questions that I had.
Okay, Pat, I know you had something before we wrap that you wanted to tell the audience about.
Well, yeah. So, Michelle, I was going to say it's we're going to close by leaving you with this offer. Meridian is very confident that we have the kind of solution that can help you solve your business problems, and we're willing to put our money where our mouth is. So if you're looking to switch, and I know at these times everybody's also looking to save some money, and you know, budgets can be very tight coming because of you know, sort of the global economic things and how that's impacting different businesses differently. I used the term earlier in the year that we may all, somebody said, oh, we're all in the same boat now. And I said, I happen to be a sailor, and I said, nah, we're all in the same water, but we're in different boats. And what I see is, it's, you know, what I mean by that is we see some of our businesses being real positively impacted by the current situation. We see others that, and sometimes they're not even what you would expect. They're being very negatively impacted. So we understand that. And so if you're looking to both, you know, do things, new things, but also need to save some money, we are making this offer for a limited time, that if you're going to switch over from one of the from your current provider, we'll guarantee you at least a 50% savings on your annual recurring software fee for the first year. And so I think that's hopefully that is a very appealing offer, and we hope you give us a chance to have some conversations with you about it.
Thank you, Patrick. And we will include a link to a page with more details about the offer tomorrow in our follow-up email, where you'll also get a copy of the recording from this session and all of the slides that were presented. So, gentlemen, thank you very much, and thank you everyone attending for your time today. Any last final words of wisdom that Patrick or Jim you want to share?
Look, I just want to thank everybody and say, it's time to get ready for really a surge in business in 2021, and start by figuring out how you're going to basically accelerate knowledge in your enterprise.
And great comment, Jim, and be safe and have a happy holiday.
Cheers.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.